All right, hey again, everyone. Channel Futures editorial director Craig Galbraith here. It's time for another edition of Channel Futures TV. A great opportunity today to talk with Frank DiBenedetto and Mike DePalma. Frank is go-to-market general manager, and Mike is senior vice president of channel enablement with Datto Acacia Company. Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Hello, Greg. Thanks for having us here.
Absolutely excited to talk to you guys today. So, Mike, why don't we start with you? In your experience, I'm wondering how businesses can ensure that they're able to recover quickly from ransomware or supply chain attacks.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've, I've been with Datto just about 10 years. We've been talking ransomware for all of those 10 years. And, 10 years ago, people would kind of nod their heads. They didn't really think it applied to them. And now that we're seeing such a focus on the small business community, this has really become a huge focus. And so, when we think about recovery, a lot of businesses are thinking at it through the lens of recovering from a traditional backup, right? That's the mindset. But in reality, the time starts ticking down the time, right away when your server gets locked up. And so you really got to start thinking about business continuity. And so it's really a mindset shift to say, okay, we're going to be able to recover our data. But in the meantime, if we want to save our money and not pay these criminals, we've got to get back up and running. And that's where business continuity comes in, the ability to virtualize that server, get everybody up and running, because now you've taken all the leverage away from the criminals.
And I think too, what I've seen, and I had an MSP for 16 years. I've exited that since then. But in my experience, a big game changer now is potentially what happens at the endpoint level, right? The workstations. And, we've seen a lot of data now move to the cloud. But what happens if the MSP wakes up one morning and all of their customers' endpoints are ransomed and you have to rebuild every workstation? So there's no data loss, but I don't know many MSPs that have that surge capacity to be able to just rebuild everything and, configure the printers, join them back to domains, et cetera. So it's a big risk there. And I think the next step of that too is if you look at the CrowdStrike incident, it wasn't a ransomware attack at all. That was software that we willfully put on the computer to protect it. And you wake up one morning and all the machines are blue screen because somebody made a mistake. So I think it expands beyond just ransomware these days. And also, you're looking at it differently as opposed to just from the servers, but now the workstation endpoints as well.
Yeah, and following that point up a little, Frank, some MSPs find selling a comprehensive backup solution pretty challenging, with clients pushing for less expensive options. I'm wondering what strategies you recommend to make this process easier for MSPs.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think looking back at my history as an MSP, I will say backup has always been the easiest component to sell. I don't think I've ever sat down with a customer and said, "Hey, we should back up your data," and they said, "No, I don't want to pay for that." So I think the mistake that a lot of MSPs make is they put the decision-making power in the customer's hands. And when you do that, especially if you confuse them on the technology, you force them to buy based on price. And I'm sure Mike will back me up on this. Backup is relatively inexpensive. Recovery is not. And that's really where the value of the solution comes in. So I like to say I sold recovery to my customers, that it had to work and it had to be there when they needed it. Backup's cheap, and if you give them that choice, that's what they'll pick every day.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to also looking at it through the lens of prescriptive style selling, in terms of you're the trusted expert here, and explaining to them the importance of backup and business continuity and recovery. And it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. And the folks that I see that are really successful in that are the folks that have the confidence of this is the solution that you need to have. Or, you know what, maybe we won't be able to work together because I can't take on a client that's not willing to have this type of backup in place.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask about cyber insurance. Frank, maybe kick this one over to you. How important is it for businesses to align their cyber liability insurance application with their backup solution? And what are some of the common gaps that you've seen?
Yeah, I think it's critical. And, we used to talk about backup being the last line of defense if all else fails. I'd argue that cyber liability insurance policy is the last line now, right? There is that next layer behind the backup should that fail. And when you look at ransomware, many times you have the backup, but the challenge is that the folks will publish your data publicly. So if you're a law firm, you might have a backup, But if you don't pay the ransom, they'll just publish all your clients' private data, and that could, you could end your business, right? So you need to have the ability to make that payment. One of the things that gets overlooked with cyber liability insurance applications is that many times the end customer, with the help of the MSP, fills it out pretty quickly. And there's all these questions, and they just check off yes, 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 and run right down, and the policy gets issued. However, my experience has been, and now we have stories, that when a claim gets filed, it's typical that the insurance carrier actually takes a look at how you answered the questions. There's questions on there like as very simple as, do you use multi-factor authentication? It's pretty simple for the insurance carrier to prove whether you have it or not. One of the questions on there, almost without fail, is what is your RTO and your RPO? Quite simply, how quickly can you recover and how far back can you go? And if you just fill in like 1 day or something frivolous, and your customer submits a claim, say for 5 days, they could say, hey, you said you'd be back up in 1 day. That's what we were insuring. That's the risk we agreed to. You lied on the application, or you simply didn't know what you were doing. That claim could either be invalidated or greatly reduced, right? And that puts your customer at risk. So you need to make sure you're protecting your customer properly and advising them when they fill out those applications, or that insurance won't be there when you need it most.
All right, so Mike, I'm really interested. Datto's got a great history, founded 17 years ago, really remained a dominant player in the backup space. What would you say has been the secret to success?
Yeah, it's interesting. When we started out, we were really focused on bringing world-class solutions, specifically in the business continuity space, to the small to medium-sized business community. And there was a lot of tools out there for the enterprise space, but there was really nothing designed for small to medium-sized businesses. And so we were able to kind of drive that whole kind of wave of technology to that space. Now, the other big piece was becoming a MSP-focused company from day one. And it allowed us to get to market in that small to medium-sized business community through our managed service providers, which allowed us to expand and also get a lot of the feedback. So as we were making developments, we were doing it through the lens of a managed service provider and listening to their feedback, because they were the folks actually managing these devices. And so that allowed us to stay innovative, make sure that we were providing solutions that actually made sense, got us out of our bubble, learning from the folks that were actually doing the work. And that's what really has allowed us to stay innovative to this day.
So I guess the question then, Frank, is what's next for Datto Backup?
I think, to answer that, you have to look at what the industry's asking for. Like what do we see evolving? Today, we know that more and more of those servers are either going to the cloud, places like Azure or AWS, or they're going serverless, which means, we're seeing data moving to OneDrive and SharePoint. So I think you do see more cloud to cloud type solutions. In some cases, a non-reliance on local backup appliances. I think too that we're starting to see this become more into an endpoint backup, where that endpoint can be anywhere. It can be a server, it can be a workstation, it could be a virtualized server. And I think what you can count on in the future is greater flexibility from Datto, in that we'll have a variety of options available to you. So if you need a local appliance, you can use it. If you want to have, faster restores in the cloud on reserve, you can have that too. So there'll be greater flexibility. Different things will be an option. And I think it just helps us keep pace with what we see out there in the world of technology today.
100%. Gentlemen, thanks for your time today on Channel Futures TV. Great learning a little more about backup and catching up with everything happening at Datto, a Kaseya company.
Thanks
very
much.
much.